My name is Risang Ayatul Mukhtabar with student number A320200157, and I'm from class extensive reading G. Only 5 dogs reached John Thornton camp: Joe, Pike, Sollex, Tick, and Buck. They fell on the ground and could not move. They were almost dead. It was nearly the end of winter, and it was a beautiful day. John Thornton was repairing an axe. "Is it safe to cross the river here?" asked Hal. "Oh no, it is very dangerous. The ice is too thin," answered Thornton. Hal looked at him and said, "I don't believe you. We must go to Dawson." He took his whip and cried, "Come on, Buck, let's go." Thornton knew these people were stupid and did not understand. The team did not move. After a while, Sol slowly stood up. Joe was crying, but he stood up. Pike tried twice and fell down. The third time he stood up. Buck did not try. Hal whipped him, but Buck did not move. Thornton wanted to speak, but he did not. Hal was furious and took the club. He hit Buck again and again, but Buck did not want to stood up. He had a strange feeling of doom. He saw thin ice in front of him. After so much suffering, he did not feel the club. Then suddenly, Thornton jumped on Hal and threw him to the ground. "Don't hit that dog again, or I will kill you," Thornton cried. "It is my dog," said Hal. "Go away, or I will hit you too. I'm going to Dawson." Thornton stood between him and Buck. Hal took out his long knife. Thornton knocked it out of Hal's hand, and then Thornton picked it up and cut Buck's harness. Hal did not want to fight. Buck was almost dead. A few minutes later, Hal and the sled went along the river. Buck raised his head and saw Pike, Sollex, Joe, and Tick pulling the sled. Thornton examined Buck's body. He was looking for broken bones. Buck was terribly thin and weak. "You have many wounds, but no broken bones," said Thornton. Both dog and man watched the sled. It was crossing the ice in the middle of the river. Suddenly, the back of the sled went down, and the front went up. There was a lot of screaming, and then a big piece of ice broke, and the dogs and the people disappeared. John Thornton and Buck looked at each other. "You poor dog," said Thornton, and Buck licked his hand. John Thornton was ill all winter. His friends left him at White River, while they went to Dawson. Thornton had a lot of food, and he was comfortable. And now it was a spring, and he was better. During the warm spring days, he and Buck sat by the river. Buck watched the water and listened to the birds. He needed the long rest. Slowly, he became stronger and fatter. John Thornton had 2 other dogs. Skid was a small dog, and she made friends with Buck. When Buck was ill, she took care of him. She washed his cuts with her tongue. Nick was a big friendly dog. His eyes laughed. When Buck became stronger, The three dogs played together. Thornton sometimes played with them. The day passed happily. For the first time, Buck learned to laugh. He and Judge Miller were very good friends, but Buck did not love him. John Thornton saved Buck's life, and he was the perfect master. He loved his dogs and took a good care of them. The dogs were like his children. He always talked to Buck. He took, he took Buck's head between his hands and shook it lovingly. He adored Thornton. When Thornton touched him or spoke to him, he was wild with happiness. He sat near Thornton and looked at his face for hours. At first, Buck followed Thornton everywhere. He did not want Thornton to live like Francois and Perrault. Buck was very happy with Thornton, but he was a dog of the Northland. He dreamed of other animals and heard them calling him. It was the call of the wild. Sometimes Buck wanted to answer the call. He often went to the forest, but he always returned to Thornton. Buck was not interested in other men. When Thornton's friends Hans and Pete returned, Buck did not notice them. He knew they were Thornton's good friends, and so he accepted them. Hans and Pete saw that Buck loved only Thornton and no one else. He was always happy to obey Thornton. One day, they were in Circle City. Black Burton was a bad and cruel man. He was in a saloon and he was fighting with another man. Thornton tried to stop them. Buck sat in a corner and watched Burton hit Thornton and he almost fell. There was a loud growl and Buck jumped into the air at Burton's throat. The man put up his arm and saved his life, and then he fell to the ground with Buck on top of him. Buck bit into his throat. Some people pulled Buck off the man. A dog arrived and examined Burton's throat. The dog attacked only because Thornton was in danger. Someone said, from that day, Buck's name became famous all over the Northland. In the fall of that year, Buck saved Thornton's life another time. The three men were going down the river. Thornton was in the boat, and Hans and Pete were on the river bank. They were holding the boat with a rope. Buck was on the bank and watched his master. Soon they came to a dangerous part of the river. The boat was going too fast because the current was strong. Hans pulled the rope to stop the boat, but it turned over. Thornton fell into the water. Buck jumped in immediately and swam to his master. Thornton took Buck's tail and Buck swam bravely towards the riverbank. But they moved slowly because the river pushed them to the rocks. We can't get to the riverbank because the current is too strong, said Thornton. He held onto a rock and let go of Buck's tail, and then he cried, "Go, Buck, go!" Buck obeyed and swam to the riverbank. Hans and Pete pulled him out of the river. We must work fast to save Thornton. He's in great danger, said Pete. They tied a rope around Buck and jumped into the river again. The river carried him past Thornton, but he finally reached him. Thornton helped held on to Buck, and Hans and Pete pulled the rope very hard. Thornton and Buck disappeared under the water. When Hans and Pete pulled them out, they both seemed dead, but they slowly opened their eyes. Thornton examined Buck's body and found 3 broken bones. "We must camp here until Buck is better," said Thornton. Demi cinta kepada seorang laki-laki, hanya 5 anjing yang mencapai perkemahan John Thornton: Joe, Pike, Solex, Dick, and Buck. Mereka jatuh ke tanah dan tidak dapat bergerak. Mereka hampir mati. Saat itu musim dingin hampir berakhir, dan itu adalah hari yang indah. John Thornton sedang memperbaiki sebuah kapal. "Apakah aman untuk menyeberangi sungai di sini?" tanya Hal. "Oh tidak, itu sangat berbahaya. Esnya terlalu tipis," jawab Thornton. Hal menatapnya dan berkata, Aku tidak mempercayaimu. Kita harus pergi ke Dawson." Dia mengambil cambuknya dan berteriak, "Ayo Buck, ayo!" Thornton tahu mereka ini bodoh dan tidak mengerti. Tim tidak bergerak. Setelah beberapa saat, Solex dengan pelan berdiri. Joe menangis, tetapi dia berdiri. Pike mencoba 2 kali dan jatuh. Kali ketiganya dia berdiri. Buck tidak mencoba. Hal mencambuknya, tetapi Buck tidak bergerak. Thornton ingin berbicara, tetapi dia tidak melakukannya. Hal sangat marah dan mengambil tongkatnya. Dia memukul Buck lagi dan lagi, tetapi Buck tidak ingin berdiri. Dia memiliki perasaan malapetaka yang aneh. Dia melihat es tipis di depannya. Setelah begitu banyak penderitaan yang dideritanya, dia tidak merasakan tongkatnya lagi. Lalu tiba-tiba Thornton melompat ke Hal dan melemparnya ke tanah. "Jangan pukul anjing itu lagi, atau aku bunuh kau," teriak Thornton. "Itu anjingku," kata Hal. "Pergilah atau aku akan memukulmu. Aku akan pergi ke Dawson." Thornton berdiri di antara dia dan Buck. Hal mengambil pisau panjangnya. Thornton menjatuhkannya dari tangan Hal. Lalu Thornton mengambilnya dan kemudian memotong tali kekang Buck. Hal tidak ingin berkelahi. Buck sudah hampir mati. Beberapa menit kemudian, Hal dan keretanya pergi ke sungai. Buck mengangkat kepalanya dan melihat Pike, Solex, Joe, dan Dick menarik keretanya. Thornton memeriksa tubuh Buck. Dia mencari tulang yang patah. Buck sudah sangat kurus dan lemah. "Kamu memiliki banyak luka, tetapi tidak ada tulang yang patah," kata Thornton. Anjing dan laki-laki itu keduanya sedang melihat keretanya. Kereta itu sedang melintasi es di tengah sungai. Tiba-tiba, bagian belakang keretanya jatuh dan bagian depannya naik. Di sana ada banyak teriakan, lalu bagian es yang besar pecah, dan anjing-anjing dan orangnya menghilang. John Thornton dan Buck memandang satu sama lain. "Kau anjing yang malang," kata Thornton, dan Buck menjilati tangannya. John Thornton sakit sepanjang musim dingin. Teman-temannya meninggalkannya di White River, sementara mereka pergi ke Dawson. Thornton memiliki banyak makanan, dan dia merasa nyaman. Sekarang musim semi, dan dia sudah lebih baik. Selama hari musim semi yang hangat, dia dan Buck duduk di sekitar sungai. Buck menatap air dan mendengarkan burung-burung. Dia membutuhkan istirahat yang panjang. Pelan-pelan dia menjadi lebih kuat dan lebih gemuk. John Thornton memiliki 2 ekor anjing lainnya. Skid adalah anjing yang kecil, dan dia berteman dengan Buck. Saat Buck sedang sakit, dia merawatnya. Dia mencuci lukanya dengan menjilatinya dengan lidahnya. Nick adalah anjing yang besar dan ramah. Matanya tertawa. Saat Buck menjadi lebih kuat, ketiga anjingnya bermain bersama. Thornton kadang bermain dengan mereka. Hari-hari berlalu dengan bahagia. Untuk pertama kalinya, Buck belajar tentang cinta. Dia dan Judge Miller adalah teman yang baik, tetapi Buck tidak mencintainya. John Thornton menyelamatkan nyawa Buck dan dia adalah majikan yang sempurna. Dia mencintai anjing-anjingnya dan merawat mereka dengan baik. Anjing-anjingnya sudah seperti anaknya sendiri. Dia selalu berbicara kepada Buck. Dia mengambil kepala Buck dan menaruhnya di antara tangan-tangannya dan menggoyangkannya dengan penuh kasih. Dia menyukai Thornton. Saat Thornton menyentuhnya atau berbicara kepadanya, dia liar dengan kebahagiaan. Dia duduk di dekat Thornton dan melihat wajahnya berjam-jam. Awalnya Buck mengikuti Thornton kemanapun. Dia tidak ingin Thornton untuk pergi seperti Francois dan Perrault. Buck sangat senang dengan Thornton, tetapi dia adalah anjing dari Northland. Dia memimpikan hewan lainnya dan mendengar mereka memanggilnya. Kadang Buck ingin menjawab panggilannya. Dia sering pergi ke hutan, tetapi dia selalu kembali ke Thornton. Buck tidak tertarik kepada orang lain. Saat teman Thornton, Hans dan Pete kembali, Buck tidak menyadari mereka. Dia tahu mereka adalah teman baik Thornton, jadi dia menerima mereka. Hans dan Pete melihat Buck hanya mencintai Thornton. Dia sangat senang mematuhi Thornton. Suatu hari mereka berada di kota Circle. Black Barton adalah orang yang buruk dan kejam. Dia sedang berada di bar dan dia sedang berkelahi dengan orang lain. Thornton mencoba untuk menghentikan mereka. Buck duduk di pojokan dan melihat Barton memukul Thornton dan hampir terjatuh. Di sana ada geraman yang keras dan Buck melompat ke udara dan menggigit leher Barton. Pria itu mengangkat lengannya dan menyelamatkan nyawanya. Lalu dia jatuh dengan Buck berada di atasnya. Buck menggigit lehernya. Beberapa orang menarik Buck dari orang itu. Seorang dokter datang dan memeriksa leher Barton. Anjingnya menyerangnya karena Thornton dalam bahaya, seseorang berkata. Dari hari itu, nama Buck menjadi terkenal di penjuru Northland. Di musim gugur tahun itu, Buck menyelamatkan nyawa Thornton sekali lagi. 3 orang sedang menuruni sungai. Thornton berada di kapal, dan Hans dan Pete berada di tepi sungai. Mereka sedang memegang kapalnya dengan tali. Buck berada di tepi Yan dan melihat majikannya. Lalu mereka sampai di bagian sungai yang berbahaya. Kapalnya bergerak terlalu cepat karena arusnya terlalu kuat. Hans menarik talinya untuk menghentikan kapalnya, tetapi kapalnya malah terbalik. Thornton jatuh ke air. Buck langsung melompat dan berenang ke majikannya. Thornton memegang ekor Buck, dan Buck dengan berani berenang menuju tepi sungai. Tetapi mereka bergerak dengan lambat karena sungainya mendorong mereka ke bebatuan. Kita tidak dapat ke tepi sungai karena arusnya terlalu kuat, kata Thornton. Dia berpegangan ke batu dan melepaskan ekor Buck. Dan dia berteriak, "Pergi Buck, pergi!" Buck mematuhinya dan berenang ke tepi sungai. Hans dan Pete menariknya dari sungai. Kita harus bekerja cepat untuk menyelamatkan Thornton. Dia dalam bahaya besar, kata Pete. Mereka mengikat tali di sekitar Buck dan dia melompat ke sungai lagi. Sungainya membawanya melewati Thornton, tetapi dia akhirnya mencapainya. Thornton berpegangan pada Buck dan Hans dan Pete menarik talinya dengan kuat. Thornton dan Buck menghilang dari bawah air. Saat Hans dan Pete menarik mereka, mereka seperti mati. Tetapi mereka pelan-pelan membuka matanya. Thornton memeriksa tubuh Buck dan menemukan 3 tulang yang patah. Kita harus berkepah di sini sampai Buck lebih baik, kata Thornton. That's it. Thank you for watching and peace out.